It had drama, both on stage and off, and an 80,000-strong crowd who didn't know whether to look at the stage, clasp the radio to their ear, or in some cases sit with a portable TV on their lap. What should have been an evening of victory and celebration turned sour in the cruelest way possible. This week the memories of that fateful night will come flooding back. On Thursday, the greatest show on earth will roll into Russia for the 21st World Cup. Elbow will support the Rolling Stones at Cardiff's Principality Stadium. The Rolling Stones performed during their No Filter Europe tour in October 2017. Image, Michelle Euler, AP. A day later the Rolling Stones, who themselves know something about putting on a show, will take to the stage at the Principality Stadium in Cardiff as part of their No Filter tour. For me, these two events played out within 24 hours of each other will provoke a solitary but spectacular reminiscence. Almost 28 years previously, the World Cup and the Rolling Stones met in a head-on collision on one of the most bizarre evenings I have ever witnessed, when joy and despair were the chief emotions on display. The date was Wednesday, July 4, 1990. I was a Welshman, at the home of English football, Wembley Stadium, to watch the Rolling Stones on the night when England held its breath. This was their biggest game since some people were on the pitch thinking it was all over, as the national team took on Franz Beckenbauer's West Germany in the Italia '90 World Cup semi-final in Turin. Manic Street Preachers on their new album, New Studio and turning 50. The crowd packed into Wembley Stadium for the Rolling Stones show on July 4, 1990. I was 21, in my first year working as a journalist at Thomson Regional Newspapers. I was dispatched from Thomson House in Cardiff to preview the Rolling Stones' forthcoming gig at the Arms Park as part of their Urban Jungle tour, tasked with writing a piece letting the readers of the South Wales Echo know what they could expect from Mick Jagger and co. before the Stones rolled into Cardiff. When handed the assignment, no one knew the significance that particular night in London would provide as the World Cup unfolded before our eyes. There was the weight of expectation that England possessed a football team that could emulate the success of the World Cup winning side of 1966. In Shilton, Butcher, Pearce, Waddle, Gascoigne and Lineker, they had a spine strong enough to match any other nation. And in Bobby Robson, they had a manager universally loved and adored by his players. Peter Beardsley, John Barnes and Day Walker in the studio recording World in Motion. This is how Cardiff looked exactly 50 years ago. What was known at that point was that Italia '90 had captured the imagination. This was underlined by many reasons, not least England having a half-decent song for once in the shape of New Order's electro anthem, World in Motion, although the less said about John Barnes rapping the better, frankly. There were those evocative and stirring BBC opening World Cup titles featuring Pavarotti's Nessun Dorma, and dashing Day Linham's Urbane Cool, a sophisticated ringmaster to referee the oft-conflicting opinions of his studio guests Jimmy Hill and Terry Venables. Then there was Cameroon seasoned striker Roger Milla and his corner flag wiggle, Scotland crashing out at the group stages amidst vilified goalkeeper Jim Leighton mistakes, and Jack Charlton and his lads having a crack as the Republic of Ireland pushed Italy all the way in a World Cup quarter-final before narrowly losing 1-0 to hosts Italy. Roger Milla of Cameroon, England, meanwhile, had built up a head of steam after a narrow passage from a group that included the Republic, Holland and Egypt. There's a close-fought 1-0 victory over Belgium in the round of 16, a titanic quarter-final victory against Cameroon, Milla et al., and then that semi-final. As a Welshman I was attuned to World Cup failure and Wales not being there. Even then I had formed a steely resolve and an inner strength to cope with something I believed to be fact, that I would never witness Wales play at the World Cup. Euro 2016 went some way to assuaging that pain, although the World Cup hoodoo still remains. By 1990, I had already witnessed two soul-destroying World Cup losses. Joe Jordan uses his hand against Wales. My earliest memory of Wales playing was watching that Argentina 78th playoff loss to Scotland. Sat in front of the TV in my replica Wales Admiral kit witnessing a referee duped by the outstretched hand of public enemy number 1 Joe Jordan. Then there was the loss, again, to Scotland in 1985 stood on the terraces at Ninian Park, as the two home nations battled it out for a place at Mexico, 86, a result that was rendered meaningless by the death of Scotland manager Jock Stein at the ground. 2 losses to the Scots. No wonder I've formed a lifelong aversion to gap-toothed strikers and haggis. And remember, this was 4 years before that fateful night at the Arms Park when Wales took on Romania for a place at USA 94. My abiding memory of arriving at Wembley then was sheer ambivalence. I was more excited by the thought of witnessing one of the world's greatest rock and roll bands for the very first time than paying much attention to England's semi-final showdown with West Germany. 80s pop icons Culture Club are bringing a show to Cardiff. The Rolling Stones' Urban Jungle stage set up at Wembley, July 4, 1990. The reason was most probably the shuddering thought of the media frenzy that would accompany an England World Cup victory. We've never heard the end of 1966. As a Welshman, the thought of decades of endless grandstanding filled me with dread. However, I hasten to add there was no hate, dislike, or malice. I felt nothing except summary indifference. The VIP area at Wembley was as grand as you would imagine the old stadium to be. A banqueting hall converted to cater for the Olympic-sized alcohol consumption of the press and assorted music industry guests. Some wrecked cars and graphics gave it an urban jungle theme, and the assorted press corps happily took advantage of the free bar as a bank of TV screens showed the World Cup semi-final. There was much talk about how the TVs would be turned off at 8:15 p.m. when the Stones took to the stage. However, as the game progressed, England dominating the Germans, and the drama and tension unfolded, it was feared there would be something approaching a riot if the screens went blank, so the TVs remained on. The Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger and Ronnie Wood performing at Wembley Stadium on July 4, 1990. Mick Jagger on stage at Wembley Stadium, July 4, 1990. Hearing the opening strains of Start Me Up, I took my seat in the press box to witness the Rolling Stones' Urban Jungle show unfold before my eyes. This was supposedly the Stones' Blade Runner-esque version of a dystopian future, presumably one where England continued to suffer World Cup heartbreak. I remember a then 46-year-old Mick Jagger wearing an emerald green frock coat, resembling Doctor Who if he had swapped the TARDIS for a rock and roll band. It was also the final tour for Bill Wyman, a man so perpetually glued to the spot he made statues look animated. Mick Jagger and Bill Wyman at Wembley Stadium, July 4, 1990. Mick Jagger, Wembley Stadium, July 4, 1990. There were many sat around me with wireless radios tuned into the commentary, while I've never forgotten the sight of then world champion boxer Gary Stretch sat several rows over from me, with a portable TV on his lap. The show progressed with Jagger apologizing to the crowd for staging the gig on the same night as England's biggest football match for decades, and then there was a collective groan that spread around the famous old stadium as word of Andreas Brehm's 59th-minute goal for West Germany filtered through to the audience. I'd made the decision that I would watch the whole set as I needed at least a rudimentary knowledge of what a Cardiff crowd could expect from the Stones before the rock and roll juggernaut thundered into the Welsh capital. Band were on blistering form despite their minds most probably being elsewhere. This was a rock group refusing to go through the motions or showing they were in any way distracted, as they motored through their classic songbook, Sympathy for the Devil, Street Fighting Man and Gimme Shelter, providing particularly unforgettable highlights. Then a roar. England had scored an 81st-minute equalizer from Gary Lineker and the crowd erupted mid-song, Jagger shouting, "Come on England," from the stage. Gary Lineker presents Match of the Day in just his pants with the game going into extra time. I was torn what to do, but stayed with the Stones, making friends with people with radios to keep me updated of what was happening. As 30 minutes added on, time passed without either side troubling the net. England's fate would be decided on penalties. Thinking there was no way I could miss this epical moment in World Cup history, whichever way it went, I joined the assorted throng in the long bar downstairs, ready to witness the polarized agony and ecstasy that only penalty shootouts can bring. Surrounded by England football fans, all this Welshman remembers is the worry and the anxiety, the cheers and the groans, and as Stuart Pearce's penalty was saved and Chris Waddle's spot kick sailed over the bar, the utter deflation of a nation's hopes crushed underfoot by the ruthless efficiency of Die Mannschafts metronomic penalty takers. Stuart Pearce's reaction after missing his penalty. Chris Waddle after his penalty miss against West Germany in 1990, the game that had famously seen Dawes' tears, saw similar scenes amongst those stood around me. In the moment of ultimate pain I felt empathy, not joy nor elation. As a long-suffering Welsh football fan I could sympathise, not gloat. Of course, if I had jumped with joy as West Germany won, I probably wouldn't have made it back down the M4 in one piece anyway. England manager Bobby Robson and assistant Don Howe walking off pitch at the end of the World Cup semi-final. While I was indifferent to the England football team, I felt for their manager Bobby Robson, a humble, endearing and eminently likable man, for whom Italia '90 was his last shot at World Cup redemption. Ultimate irony was the Rolling Stones' final encore that night. I can't get no satisfaction. How presciently perfect and cruelly ironic could a song be? Paul Gascoigne cries during the 1990 World Cup semi-final. Mick Jagger in the intervening years has admitted he considered cancelling the Wembley gig, but went ahead thinking England would not make it to the semi-final. Maybe the band has learned from their mistakes, as none of their UK no-filter tour dates clash with England's games at the 2018 World Cup. Leaving the stadium was eerie, almost silent, as the amorphous mass of fans flooded out of the stadium. The post-gig exit would usually be euphoric, a buoyant flood of people high on the temporary adrenaline rush that concerts can provide. This time, however, there was nothing, except broken dreams. The World Cup in Russia kicks off this Thursday. The Rolling Stones bring their no-filter tour to Cardiff's Principality Stadium on Friday, June 15.